Happy to be here, yes. Before we start, I want to thank everybody that gave their time and expertise during and after the hurricanes to St. Martin. As in 2010, when I was acting Lieutenant Governor, I was called upon to lead at a certain moment when we had a hurricane, and we often underestimate what is being done in the background to keep the people safe. No matter how it looks out there, I know firsthand from that experience what it takes. And so I certainly want to thank everybody who has assisted St. Martin, both the local people and people that came from abroad, volunteers, and of course, Laser 101 that kept us all informed. Okay, the first agenda point, extension term. A captain never abandons ship during a storm. With this statement, I care to introduce my decision for reconsidering to stay on temporary as Ombudsman after I publicly bid farewell and paved the way for my successor. Pleased and confident about the Selection Committee's presentation to Parliament to consider appointing the person I have been coaching internally in preparation of the end of my term, I had accepted the request from the committee to extend the coaching beyond my departure. However, when the storm hit our island, being quite conscious of the issues the aftermath will bring, I reconsidered an earlier request on behalf of the Presidium of Parliament to stay on for a second term. However, this, of course, has been honored and accepted under strict agreement that this will be for just a short term to bridge the crisis period. Because I believe that this is a time to put country above self. For completeness' sake, I care to explain that while I have passed the general pensionable age and made preparations to fully venture into this stage of my life, the maximum age established by law for an ombudsman to hold office is set beyond the general pension age, namely to 70 years. Considering that it is not clear how long bridging the crisis will take, and the fact that the law does not provide for short-term appointments of the Ombudsman, the reappointment is formally for a period of 7 years. The law, however, provides the possibility for the Ombudsman to retire upon request. This moment will be determined internally with a candidate on the training, my team of the Bureau, and ultimately by Parliament. Before the question is posed to me to reveal the name of the person in training, being that the appointment of the Ombudsman is a prerogative of Parliament, I do not consider myself at liberty to do so since Parliament chose not to mention the name. Important is, however, that this person has been deemed qualified and the better candidate to the selection committee, be it with the observation that some additional coaching is required. Let me put to you that this is not strange at all, because as you may recall that the selection committee at the time of my appointment in 2010 had hunted me. After the 5 or 6 candidates at the time were not considered qualified for the post. As such, I was requested to apply for the position. Furthermore, after my colleague in the Netherlands demitted office in 2014, the search for a suitable successor took more than a year. I must share with you that the international standards to assume the responsibilities of the Ombudsman office are set rather high when considering qualifications and experience. As such, it proves that the selection committee of St. Martin did not cut corners, but followed international standards for the position. The Ombudsman is a High Council of State, meaning that it is a body of state and represents the country. I therefore thank Parliament for its continued confidence in me to lead this distinct and important institute for the country, for the people of St. Martin. Looking at the second point on the agenda, as I indicated that I stayed on to bridge the crisis period, what will be the focus of the Ombudsman during this crisis period? That we are in a state of crisis is clear. And it should therefore be obvious that business as usual cannot apply in this stage. As such, our focus will be on monitoring, relief, recovery, and rebuilding procedures, using the mandate of the Ombudsman provided for by law to supervise and promote propriety in the allocation of material and services in the recovery and rebuilding stages of the country. We will evaluate policies and procedures, as well as identify bottlenecks and recommend on eliminating procedural hurdles in the recovery and rebuilding procedures. In the coming months, matters regarding relief, recovery, and rebuilding will have preference above going concerns. The strategy outlined to monitor these procedures are as follows. For the past weeks, we have been working on gathering information regarding the various relief efforts, both by government and NGOs. This to facilitate referrals when approached by the public. Secondly, considering that all attention is required to rebuild the country, we understand that the focus of government and the civil servants are geared towards relief, recovery, and rebuilding. As such, ongoing cases are therefore being reviewed to terminate the investigations with recommendations to government to properly deal with them. The public is requested to file substantial complaints regarding relief, recovery, and rebuilding promptly with the Ombudsman. It should be noted that the complaints will not be handled as usual. It is not the intention to just investigate why the complainant did not receive the requested relief, but we will scrutinize the selection procedures to keep a close eye on how the various registration lists, applications, and procedures are dealt with. A fast-track investigation will apply. Transparency, fairness, and accountability should be the guiding elements for the relief, recovery, and rebuilding efforts. Complaints regarding going concerns, which are impacted by the hurricanes and have important consequences for the livelihood of the complainant, will be investigated forthwith. However, going concerns which are not immediately impacted by the hurricanes will be put on hold. Lastly, I have a call to action. I commend and applaud the ministries and government agencies which have been forthcoming and informed the public of what the public can expect from both government and the private sector. While the Ministry of Labor has issued a communiqué about the rights of employees and the obligations of employers, and SFA has been publishing measures in managing the crisis, I call upon all entities for their cooperation and send us their guidelines and requirements to provide relief and assistance to the public. This in order to assist and enable us at the Ombudsman to refer the public to the right entities for assistance. Both government and NGOs are encouraged to share as much as possible information and tips with the public through you, the media. In particular, I call on the rent committee, because we all know that already questions have reached our offices about rent issues, the issues of tenants that are asked to leave the premises because the landlord wants to reconstruct the building. So a proper balance will have to be found between the rights of the tenants and the rights of the landlord. The rent committee is the entity that have to give guidance in this situation. The St. Martin Housing and Development Foundation, NGOs such as the Red Cross, VKS, and other operating within the community, on how persons can access relief items distributed by them. I call upon government regarding the voucher system. The next steps persons who filled in registrations form for relief should look out for, and much more. Transparency and clarity is required pertaining to what the public may expect. Though assessments are not yet completed, I call upon the Ministry of VSA to look into shortened emergency procedures to address the financial, social, and emotional well-being of the people. Procedures regarding legal aid for those who might have to address the court pertaining to labor or housing issues. The Ministry of FROMI regarding the debris and garbage removal in areas difficult accessible by private persons. This to preserve the environment on the long term. We all saw the debris on the hills or places where the private citizen really do not have access, or it is not private property, it's domain property. Information regarding building permits and more. And of course, I call upon the public in general, to be tolerant towards each other and let the general interest prevail above our own personal interest. We need to remember that apart from our own bad situation, that there are those who are worse off. And even so, there are those who lost everything and are worst off. First come, first serve may not always be the norm today, but the needs of the most vulnerable and the hardest hit should prevail. Those who are able or maybe well connected will most likely be registered on top of the list, but may not necessarily be the most vulnerable among us. And then last but certainly not least, I thank my staff who came out on September 18th and the weeks after, notwithstanding their personal circumstances, to work with me in preparing to face and bridge the crisis in the aftermath of the events. Some came to the office with their children and dedicated their time to be ready to address the concerns of the public post-Hurricane Irma and Irma's friends. As such, I call upon the public to understand that we too, at the Ombudsman, have to adopt and prioritize our investigations to address the concerns of those among us that are hardest hit. My commitment towards my team and the people of St. Martin to continue coaching and preparing a person to take over the reins shortly continues unabated.